Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Hilary Fredrickson, and this is Dr. Kara Burkhart. We are the co-founders of Cultivate Fertility, and we are naturopathic doctors and who practice acupuncture and have
Mhm.
created this business and this place, this community in a way to support women on fertility journeys. And we are here to talk to you about pregnancy, infant loss and pregnancy loss, and it is the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, and we are here to bring you some of our love.
Yes, and the way I ended up here with you is through having such struggles actually get to have children, and, um, I think that it always helps our clients and our patients and our community to hear that. I had 5 miscarriages. It was not easy. There was absolutely a part of it that I thought, "This is never gonna happen for me," and I literally felt like I was cursed. I don't know, I read too many fairy tales as a child. I really felt like I was cursed. And it was just this hopeless space and a very, very clear feeling of being alone too, because I couldn't really go out with my friends in their 20s and talk to them about this. It was embarrassing because I am a naturopathic physician and we believe in our bodies healing themselves. And for some reason, I just couldn't get it to work for my own self. So it just felt like I was a failure in so many different ways. And it was a really hard time in my life. The funny part about it is Hillary and I are really old friends. And looking back on it, I'm like, why didn't I just like loop in Hillary? Like, I don't know. And so that's the discussion today is talking about how to get some support around this and how to have a community and a real conversation going and not to sort of not wanna tell everyone and have that kind of conversation going. So, my natural instinct is just always to, deal with trauma and, sort of problem solve it, go into this place of micromanagement and take action and, nothing bad's gonna happen on my watch is kinda like my reaction to anything that goes bad. And so I think in that space, which many of you can relate to, it's really hard to call someone and say, I'm really struggling here. And at that time, there absolutely were some support groups and things. We didn't have online communities, but it just wasn't someplace that I felt like I could go. I was a busy doctor. I couldn't really make time for that, to go to a cafe and meet with women in Resolve, for instance, although I wish I had. So that's the setup for this conversation. And I think the first space now we have all these incredible resources, and women don't have to sit alone at home, feeling in despair. And one of the first questions to ask it is sort of, what is my response here? Am I trying to hack it as far as, what's wrong? I'm gonna go to this doctor, I'm gonna go to do that, I'm gonna, like, problem solve in that way and avoid of feeling the emotions of it, because that was sort of my way of it. Or are you a person who just is an underreactor and you just kind of go into your own emotional space and, just sort of feel like you can't do anything. It's sort of those are the 2 playing fields. You find yourself on one team or the other, and so that's sort of the first space. Hillary, you're probably a overreactor in that you're gonna fix the problem, right?
Interestingly enough, I think I'm a freezer. It
You
doesn't.
freeze.
I think I'm just still learning more about my trauma
Mhm.
response. Obviously, if I'm helping somebody, then I'm in action, and that's my job. That's what we do all day, right? We're in action for other people. When it's me, I'm really looking back at kind of managing my divorce and some hard things, and I was like, wow, I really like froze. Like I could talk about it and share my experience with people, but it wasn't like so getting the support I need. So these things are very complicated. Like our response
Mhm.
to a traumatic event is very layered and complicated. We're taught from watching our parents. We're taught from being in a community. So just being a woman, we are taught certain things. So it's a very unconscious process when something happens to you, you sort of like, and the very hard thing about miscarriages, and I can't say that I had a miscarriage. So mine has come from being in the work and supporting women and couples for all these years. But the very hard thing, especially if you've been on a fertility journey or an infertility journey, many women, if they get pregnant naturally and they have a miscarriage, many women suffer a loss and they feel it, though they come at it as like, okay, this is 1 in 4, right? This is a very big percentage of pregnancies that end up in a miscarriage. And so if women haven't had a struggle going into it, I think there's more resilience. Like they're like, okay, well, I'll do it again. Or there's a process of healing, but there's also sort of like okay, well, that happened for me, so it can happen again. When women have been struggling with infertility or have had an infertility diagnosis or have tried really hard to get pregnant and then there is a loss, it is a very intense, can be a very intense trauma response, because it's sort of like the organism goes, oh my God, that was my one shot, or that's never going to happen for me again, or oh my gosh, I just went through all this. And then, and you're still in the same statistical pool, whether you got pregnant easily or you really worked hard to get there. So it's like you're up against these hard statistics of human nature where the body doesn't, things that aren't going to develop normally. There's a natural process of getting rid of tissue that's not going to develop beautifully, right? So like miscarriages happen, and so I just want to like speak to that. And so I feel like for the women who have been on an infertility journey, though any loss is a loss, and nobody suffers more, nobody deserves more time to heal. Everybody gets a process, but I just want to honor that, like, for those couples, if you've done several rounds of IVF, you get a positive and then you have a miscarriage, right? Like you're stacking traumas on trauma.
Yes. And that's the hard part is, this is so ingrained in our DNA and sort of why we think we're here. You know what I mean? It's sort of like this thing of, you want to have a baby so badly. It's that ultimate thing that you're just dying to have happen. And when you lose a baby or you lose a pregnancy, it can hit us in ways we have no idea. You can't sort of use our anxiety strategies of, I'm going to think about this scenario and how I'll react, or think about this scenario and how I'll react. You can't really do that because it's so emotional. It hits you really hard and sometimes takes your breath away. You fall on the floor kind of thing. And no one's quite prepared. I think that's really true about how you're really going to feel about this. And part of it is because we don't openly talk about these things in our culture. If you have a friend or someone you are close with who had a baby die, sometimes we don't know how to ask them, what can I do for you? What kind of support can I offer you? And because it's hard, I know you had that miscarriage, how can I be there? And what do you need? And those kind of things, we kind of avoid them in some kind of way. And then we don't know how to interact with that person anymore. So it's really hard because, especially what if you're pregnant or you have a baby going and this person is having a struggle. Sometimes you just don't know what to say. But I'll say that every time I've had those questions in my mind of, should I reach out to this person? Should I just offer some kind of support? It can be a text, it can be a message, it can be anything.
It's always yes.
It's always yes. And it's always, what do I say here? This is uncomfortable for me, because you don't want to bring it up if you feel like they've moved on in some way, and you just don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and you don't want to in any way cause them any harm. But the reality is, just a hands-off text has been my go-to move, where it's, I know there's a lot going on and you definitely don't have to respond to this text or anything, but I want you to know that I'm feeling for you and thinking of you and keeping you in my heart and in my prayers or whatever it is, something like that just goes a long way because you take it off. They don't need to respond to you. They don't, it's like, you're just like, you're in my heart today. It's like that kind of thing always is a good plan. I really think it's always a good plan. And
I think in what we're speaking about is this notion of trying to find community.
yeah.
And I think that when people suffer a loss that's as personal and intense as a woman carrying a baby, wherever it is, if it's in the beginning of a pregnancy or heaven forbid later in the pregnancy or a stillbirth or something that just becomes it's very difficult to handle. I think one thing for the person that's been through it, and I'm assuming if you're watching this, you've been through it, you might not find support in the places that are immediately obvious to you, where it might maybe a mother, where you think, oh, my mother or my father or my spouse or my partner, they might not be the person in the end that's your primary support going through something like this. It may be that communicating with a practitioner that's really holding you, because these relationships are all a little bit loaded. And so those people may be the ones that are your primary support, but don't be surprised if it's not, and that you need to be with a provider that can hold you in a really safe space, or that where there's not any kind of other load on the relationship, or that you may be working with somebody or connecting the most with somebody who's experienced the same loss, because your partner doesn't know. If you have a male partner, they don't know what it feels like to go through hormone changes. Their body hasn't changed. So it's harder for them to fully relate to the loss in the same way. Some are amazing at it. Some have a really hard time with it. So you might need to find community and support in ways that you don't know. It may be a massage therapist that the touch is actually healing for you. Oh, go ahead, Evelyn. That'd be great. Evelyn is going to drop a link for Postpartum Support International, which is an online support group. And this is like what didn't exist when Kara had her 5 miscarriages. And so Kara's going through life as an early naturopathic doctor. She studied Chinese medicine. On some level, I think, probably thought that she should know how to fix things, or she should just know, or on some level, all of us, when our bodies don't do what we want them to do, we have faith issues with our body. We don't trust our bodies. We don't understand what's going on. And so many of us freeze in that responsiveness and do some sort of negative self-talk or some sort of shame or grief. The grief cycle is shame is kind of like right there in with grief sometimes. And so the good news is about 2023 is that there's so many support groups, so that somebody like Kara, who was saying that she had community all around her, and it was hard for her to connect into that because it's that asking. And with early miscarriage, many people don't know. Many people don't even know that you were ever pregnant. It's very different than like if you go through a divorce, like people knew you were married and then people know that you're no longer married. And like it's kind of right there for the world to know. When you're going through an early miscarriage, obviously later miscarriages are very different, but many people don't even know that you were pregnant. So you're not going to get that. So it's on you to go look for help and guidance.
So
And
we have some resources, right, that we're going to share. So underneath this video, or if you write hello at Cultivate Foundations, we can give you more.
Hello, Cultivate Fertility. Yeah, either way. But we have both things will get you to our team. If you're on our email list and you respond to an email. And we want you to know that Kara and I have built out our fertility support team here at Cultivate Fertility. We work with patients and clients individually as support, helping them on their fertility journey. And we've created a team with a woman named Carissa Spada who helps us significantly with our clients and patients, helps them integrate some of the changes we want them to make, helps them integrate or helps them with sleep, with stress, with lifestyle, with support. She's been on her own fertility journey and has an incredible amount of compassion and love. She's our go-to person for our team. I just also want to speak to Pauline, our nutritionist, because one thing that can really happen when you go through a personal trauma is that it's very hard sometimes to just do the basic living and support yourself with your food. Some people when they go into fight or flight or freeze, however it works, you lose your appetite. Eating becomes very challenging. And it's, as naturopathic physicians, we're always trying to get the nutrients in, help the body wherever you are. We don't want, especially if you're on a fertility journey and you're trying to maintain your fertility, we want you to really keep your nutrition. And that can be something that's very hard to do. So even working with our team, with our nutritionist, can be really helpful to figure out what are a couple easy ways to get nutrients in without having to focus on a lot of food, or when you don't have an appetite, or if you feel nauseous, or if you're under a lot of stress. So we just want to emphasize there's no one way to heal. Everybody's going to have their own journey, and everybody's going to have their own timeline, and everybody's going to have their own process. And there is no one good way to heal. Some people need 10 people on a team to help them through it. Some people need one. Some people need 5 months to recover. Some people need 5 years to recover. Some people need 5 weeks to recover. And all of it's perfect as long as you're on a healing path, right? We just want to honor that it's a very different process for everybody. And you're not going to know how it's going to be for you until you're in it, right?
Right. It's hard to predict. So use some of these resources and just reach out. Women help women here. And that's the way it traditionally was. And that's the way it's set up today. So get some conversation going.
If you're listening to this live today, today's Monday, October 16th, you may be listening to this way in the future, and we don't know, but we're doing a talk today with Lauren Hanna about grief. And there's a lot going on right now in our state of affairs in the world. And so we're doing a talk today about managing kind of painful emotions and grief. So if you want to come on to that, we'll be doing that today, and you can find that information but we'll be here all week, bringing you different strategies and ways to help and bring some awareness into different healing strategies for you on this journey. Mwah! Much love.
Bye.